Good Monday, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for November the 13th. Today, we are reading together in Second Chronicles chapter 23. Appreciate you take some time with me on this Monday to read along in Second Chronicles. We're going to read today about Athaliah being overthrown and what it took for that to actually happen. I will make a couple of really, I think, important connections here within this text. Let me get the text up on the screen for us. We'll read along together here in Second Chronicles chapter 23. Beginning in verse number 1, 2 Chronicles 23 and verse number 1. Then in the 7th year, Jehoiada summoned his courage and took the commanders of hundreds into a covenant with him. Azariah, son of Jehoram, Ishmael, son of Jehanan, Azariah, son of Obed, Maaseiah, son of Adiah, and Elishaphat, son of Zikri. They made a circuit throughout Judah. They gathered the Levites from all the cities of Judah and the family heads of Israel, and they came to Jerusalem. Then the whole assembly made a covenant with the king in God's temple. Jehoiada said to them, "Here is the king's son. He will reign, just as Yahweh promised concerning David's sons. This is what you are to do. A third of you, priests and Levites, are to come on duty on the Sabbath." Let me say that again. A third of you, priests and Levites, who are coming on duty on the Sabbath are to be gatekeepers. A third are to be the king's at the king's palace, and a third are to be at the foundational gate, or the foundation gates. And all the troops will be in the courtyards of Yahweh's temple. No one is to enter Yahweh's temple but the priests and those Levites who serve. They may enter because they are holy, but all the people are to obey the requirements of Yahweh. The Levites are to completely surround the king with weapons in hand. Anyone who enters the temple is to be put to death, accompanying the king in all his daily tasks. So the commanders of hundreds did everything the priest Jehoiada commanded. They each brought their men, those coming on duty on the Sabbath and those going off duty on the Sabbath, for the priest Jehoiada did not release the divisions. The priest Jehoiada gave to the commanders of hundreds King David's spears, shields, and quivers that were in God's temple. Then he stationed all the troops with their weapons in hand surrounding the king, from the right side of the temple to the left side, by the altar and by the temple. They brought out the king's son, put the crown on him, gave him the testimony, and made him king. Jehoiada and his sons anointed him and cried, "Long live the king." When Athaliah heard the noise from the troops, the guards, and those praising the king, she went to the troops in Yahweh's temple. As she looked, there was the king standing by his pillar at the entrance. The commanders and the trumpeters were by the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets, while the singers with the musical instruments were leading the praise. Athaliah tore her clothes and screamed, "Treason! Treason!" Then the priest Jehoiada sent out the commanders of hundreds, those in charge of the army, saying, "Take her out between the ranks, and put anyone who follows her to death by the sword." For the priest had said, "Don't put her to death in Yahweh's temple." So they arrested her, and she went by the entrance to the horse gate, by the entrance of the horse gate to the king's palace, where they put her to death. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between himself, the king, and the people, that they would be Yahweh's people. So all the people went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed its altars and images and killed Matan, the priest of Baal, at the altars. Then Jehoiada put the oversight of Yahweh's temple into the hands of the Levitical priests, whom David had appointed over Yahweh's temple to offer burnt offerings to the Lord, or to Yahweh, as it is written in the law of Moses, with rejoicing and song ordained by David. He stationed the gatekeepers at the gates of Yahweh's temple, so that nothing unclean could enter for any reason. Then he took with him the commanders of hundreds, the nobles, and the governors of the people, and all the people of the land, and brought the king down from Yahweh's temple. They entered the king's palace through the upper gate and seated the king on the throne of the kingdom. All the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet, for they had put Athaliah to death by the sword. And that is Second Chronicles chapter 23. All right, so here in this text, we remind ourselves quickly about what we saw yesterday in 2 Chronicles 22, which was the death of Ahaziah, and how his death, accompanied with the unwillingness of anyone under him or who was in line for the throne to step up into the throne, created a power vacuum. And Athaliah, his mother, stepped up and fulfilled that role. Now, what we need to recognize, though, is that she was a very wicked woman. And that wickedness was very quickly manifested in the fact that she sought out to kill all those who might have the opportunity to take the throne. But she was not able to kill one young man. His name was Joash. He was saved by the wife of Jehoiada, I believe is correct there. Yes, the wife of Jehoiada. She is referred to in 2 Chronicles as Jehoshabeath, where in Kings she's referred to as Jehosheba. So she saves Joash, hides him away in the temple so that he's not killed, because if he would have been killed, the lineage of David would have been wiped out, would have been done. But Yahweh provides, and his people step up to show their faith and confidence in Yahweh. So he was preserved, and the lineage of David is preserved. So 7 years or 6 in the 7th year after all this takes place, the text tells us that Jehoiada summoned his courage and basically began this revolt against Athaliah, which just was not a unjust revolt, but it was very just. She had no right to the throne, and she was a wicked woman, and she needed to be overthrown. But I want to note that as he's going out with these other men throughout the land, gathering Levites and bringing them together at Jerusalem, they enter into this covenant to, again, do what's necessary here. I want to note that the text says that he summoned his courage, and then as he begins to speak and lay out this plan, he makes it abundantly clear that all this being done is according to Yahweh's promises concerning David's sons. So I would venture to say here, connecting the dots, that Jehoiada's courage is based upon the promises of God. He has such great confidence in Yahweh's promises coming to fruition that he is willing here to put himself out on a limb and in a precarious situation in order to make things right within the kingdom. So for us, when everything of where our confidence should be, it needs to be in Yahweh. It needs to be in his promises, not in our own wisdom or not in our ability or whatever we might think concerning ourselves, but in him. And again, his promises, his character, who he is. Jehoiada does that. He puts his confidence in Yahweh and concocts his plan and enacts it in order to get Judah back to where it needs to be and to kick this very wicked woman off the throne. So the way he does this, he divides everybody up into three groups, and he tells them that we are going to, let's see here, verse number 6, no one is enter Yahweh's temple, but the priests and those Levites who serve, they may enter because they are holy. Obviously, during the time of Athaliah, and what we're going to see here in verses 16 and 17 is that Athaliah had no regard for Yahweh, his temple, his law, his commandments. In fact, she had helped, best I can tell, she had helped to erect a temple to Baal and had instituted a priesthood for his worship. So Jehoiada and these individuals on his side are seeking to restore restore Judah to proper worship and to actual respect and following for Yahweh and his temple. So you guys are going to be the ones who take care of the king as we basically have this coup to raise him up and exalt him up to the throne. So he does that. He equips them all with weapons. He puts them all within the temple, and then he presents the son. He presents Joash to all those who are gathered here, and they recognize that he is the king, and they cry out, "Long live the king!" Of course, Athaliah, she hears this. She understands something is going on, and she comes in there and she sees Joash, who she thinks, again, all of Ahaziah's sons are dead. She thinks the lineage is wiped out and that she's it. And then she sees all the people responding to him and praising him and acknowledging him as the king. And in her mind, this is treason because, well, she's the queen. She has the power. But Jehoiada, along with all those who are doing what is right and recognizing where the actual authority lies in this situation, he calls her out, gathers the people that are with him, and they put her to death as they should have. But they don't do it in the temple because remember, they are concerned with maintaining the holiness of the temple. So we're not going to kill her in the temple. We're going to take her somewhere else. And anybody who follows her, we're going to take her out. We're going to take them out. We're going to kill them as well. Again, this behavior on their part, not just the usurping the throne, but the murder of the descendants of Ahaziah, the paganistic worship that they have instituted within the land. All this is certainly worthy of death. But not only that, but they also, as I mentioned earlier, Jehoiada, his folks, and all the people of Judah now, they go to the temple of Baal, they tear it down, they smash the altars, the images, they kill even the priest at the altars, because that, again, of course, is not something that is acceptable within Judah. There is one God alone, that is Yahweh, and he is the only one who deserves a temple. He's the only one who deserves priests. He's the only one who deserves altars of sacrifice. So they take care of the paganistic worship, and then they focus specifically on the proper worship of Yahweh. He put the oversight of Yahweh's temple into the hands of the Levitical priest, exactly as it should have been. These are the men that David had appointed, again, according to the will of God, to offer sacrifices and to do what is written in the law of Moses. He stations gatekeepers. And what's that reason for? He stations gatekeepers who are basically the guard. They are the security of the temple, so that nothing unclean could enter for any reason. Anyone who sought to defile the sacred space of Yahweh's temple, that wouldn't stand. They would take care of that, which is, again, seems to be something that was not being done under the rule of Athaliah. All the people bring the king then from Yahweh's temple. Jehoiada, his people, and all the people then bring him from the temple to his palace, and they put him on the throne. And I want to note that the people rejoiced. The people of the land rejoiced. All the people of the land rejoiced. Why? Because they had put Athaliah to death by the sword. Those who knew what was right summoned the courage based upon God's promises. They believed God's promise that one of David's descendants would remain on the throne. They believed that, and they acted upon that, and they completely eradicated and wiped out the wickedness that had grown roots within the land, so much so that even a temple of Baal had been erected. They completely wiped that out, and they refocused the people. They refocused the land. They refocused everything that needed to be done upon God, upon his temple, upon his service, and they reinstituted the proper king to his place. This is in every way a restoration of that which had been not destroyed, but broken to a very, very great degree. And it's all done based upon someone having the courage in God's promises and being willing to step up and act. Again, think about this story from the perspective of those who were in post-exilic Israel. They're thinking about, what all had been broken for them, how everything had been taken away from them in many ways as they had been sent into captivity. But now they're back in the land, and they're seeking to restore proper worship and proper lives before God. Here's the chronicler saying, listen, this has happened before. You're not the first people who have restored things to what they need to be. Look at this example. Look at Jehoiada. Look at what motivated him. Look at what he did. And you too can find courage in the restoration project that you are engaged in as well. If you have any questions or comments about this text here in 2 Chronicles 23, please feel free to leave that in the comments section below. And I do appreciate you taking some time to read along with me today. Hope that you have a great rest of your Monday, and we'll be back at it again tomorrow reading from 2 Chronicles chapter 24. Hope to see you then. Take care, and God bless.